She was barefoot and hungry, begging for a hot meal. What happened next will leave you speechless. The girl hit the dirt road the way a wounded bird hits the ground, without grace, without warning, and with no plan for what came next. Her feet were bare and bleeding, cut open by 2 days of gravel and dry brush. The sun was already hammering down on the flats of Cutter's Creek, and the town at the end of that road was the only thing standing between her and something a lot worse than hunger. Her name was Nell Hart. She was 19 years old. She had 32 cents in the pocket of a torn dress, a bruise on her left jaw that had gone yellow at the edges, and the particular kind of silence around her that told anyone watching she had come from somewhere she was never going back to. The town of Cutter's Creek had one main street, one saloon, one general store, a blacksmith shop, a land office with a broken window, and a cookhouse called Dora's that served beans, cornbread, and whatever the morning had brought in from the surrounding ranches. The smell of that cookhouse reached Nell before the buildings came into view. Bacon fat and wood smoke. It hit her stomach like a fist. She walked straight to the door. Inside, a broad woman with gray-streaked hair and flour on her apron was moving between tables, setting down plates with the efficiency of someone who had been doing it since before most people in town were born. That was Dora Crane. She ran the cookhouse, owned the building, and had opinions about everything that happened within a 2-mile radius of her front door. She also had eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Nell standing in the doorway, looked at the bare feet, the bruised jaw, the way the girl's hands were pressed flat against her thighs to stop the shaking. Dora did not say anything right away. She set down the plate she was holding and walked to the door and looked at the girl the way a doctor looks at a patient, gathering information, drawing conclusions, deciding on a course of action. "You got money?" Dora asked. 32 cents, Nell said. "Sit down." Nell sat at the end of the long table near the window. A man at the far end of the table looked up from his eggs and glanced at her feet and then looked away. 2 old ranchers in the middle did not look up at all. The only other person who paid her any attention was a man sitting alone at a corner table, leaning back in his chair with his hat pushed forward over his eyes. His name was Cole Hadley. He was 34 years old and had the lean, quiet look of a man who carried his history on the inside where no one could read it. He wore a long gray duster despite the heat, and there was a rifle leaning against the wall behind him, close enough to grab without standing up. He was the town's acting deputy, though the word acting had been in front of his title for going on 14 months, because the real sheriff had gone to Abilene for a prisoner transfer and had not yet come back, and nobody in Cutter's Creek talked about why. Cole did not move when Nell came in. He tracked her from under the brim of his hat the way he tracked everything in that room, calmly, without expression, filing away the details. Barefoot, young, moving like something that had been running and had finally run out of road. Dora came back with a plate of beans, 2 pieces of cornbread, a boiled egg, and a cup of coffee so dark it looked like river mud. She set it in front of Nell without ceremony. "That's more than 32 cents worth," Nell said. "I know what it's worth," Dora said. "Eat." Nell ate. She ate the way people eat when food has become something they are no longer sure they can count on. Fast, focused, grateful down to the bone. She did not look up. She did not speak. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup and felt the warmth move up into her palms, and she closed her eyes for a second, just a second. And in that second, her face changed into something younger and much more frightened than the face she had been wearing at the door. Cole watched all of it. When Nell was halfway through the beans, the front door opened again. 3 men walked in. They were not the kind of men who came to Dora's for breakfast. They wore the same colors, brown leather vests, red bandanas around their necks, and they moved in that loose, shoulder-forward way that was not quite a swagger, but was close enough to make everyone in the room set down their forks. The one in front was named Gil Boone. He was not tall, but he was wide, built like a man who had grown up working rock, and he had a scar under his left eye shaped like a fishhook. He scanned the room the way a man scans a room when he is looking for one thing in particular. His eyes landed on Nell. She did not turn around, but every muscle in her back went tight. Her hand stopped moving. The spoon stayed in the beans, and her whole body became completely and carefully still. The stillness of someone who has learned that staying still is the first line of survival. "There she is," Gil Boone said to nobody in particular. His voice was light and friendly in the way that some dangerous things are light and friendly. "Morning, Nell." Cole Hadley pushed his hat back off his eyes. The room felt the shift without anyone naming it. The two old ranchers picked up their coffee cups. The man who had glanced at Nell's feet slid his chair back half an inch from the table. Dora, behind the counter, reached slowly beneath the counter with one hand. Cole did not reach for anything. He just sat there with his hat back and his eyes open, watching Gil Boone stand in the middle of Dora's cookhouse with his easy smile and his two men behind him, looking at a barefoot girl who had eaten maybe half a plate of beans and was holding herself like she expected the world to hit her again. "Long way from home," Gil Boone said. Still friendly, still light. Cole's chair came down off the back two legs and settled flat on the floor. "She's eating," Cole said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Gil Boone turned and looked at Cole Hadley with the particular interest of a man assessing a variable he had not accounted for. "Deputy," he said. "That's right," Cole said. The room held its breath. Outside, down the street, a horse stamped once in the dust and went quiet. Nell kept her eyes on her plate. Her hand had started shaking again, but she pressed it flat against the table and breathed and did not move. And nobody in that room could have said for certain whether she was terrified or furious or both, because her face had gone back to that careful nothing that she wore at the door. Gil Boone looked at Cole for a long moment. Then he looked at Nell. Then he smiled, the smile that was not a smile, and said, "We'll be outside." He walked out. His two men followed. The door swung shut behind them. Nobody in Dora's moved or spoke for a full 5 seconds. Then Dora set down whatever she had been holding beneath the counter and came around to the end of the table and stood near Nell without touching her. "You know those men?" Dora asked. Nell picked up her spoon. She went back to the beans. "Yes," she said. Cole Hadley was already on his feet, moving toward the window. Dora's cookhouse had a back door, and it opened onto a narrow alley between the building and the blacksmith shop. And that alley ran north behind the whole row of storefronts and came out near the stable at the top of the street. Cole knew the layout the way he knew every inch of Cutter's Creek, not because he had studied it, but because 14 months of being the only law in a town that needed one had a way of burning the geography into a man's mind. He stood at the window and watched Gil Boone and his two men take up positions on the porch of the general store across the street. They were not hiding. They were not in a hurry. They settled in like men who had done this before and knew how it went and were perfectly comfortable with the waiting. That told Cole more than the red bandanas had. He turned back to Nell. She had finished the beans. She was sitting with her hands flat on the table and her eyes on the wall in front of her. And her face had that quality again. Not blank exactly, but sealed. Like a letter that had been sent and could not be taken back. "How far did you walk?" Cole asked. She looked at him. measured him the way she had been measuring everything since she walked in. Quickly, carefully, deciding how much to give. 2 days, she said. From the Boone Range, up past the North Fork. Cole pulled a chair out and sat down across from her. Not close, not hovering, just level. The way you sit when you want someone to understand you are not above them. He your employer? Cole asked. Something moved behind her eyes. It was not the word she would have chosen. He was, she said. Cole did not press, and he had learned a long time ago that the fastest way to close a door was to push it. He's got 2 men and a good view of the front door, Cole said. That means something to you? It means he's not here to talk, Nell said. The words were plain, simple, said without drama. They landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Cole nodded once. Dora came and refilled the coffee without being asked. She looked at Cole over Nell's head, and Cole gave her a small tilt of his chin that meant something specific. Dora went to the back of the cookhouse, and Cole heard the quiet sound of the back door being checked and the bolt sliding home. You got something he wants back, Cole said. It was not quite a question. Nell reached into the pocket of her torn dress. She set a small folded piece of paper on the table. She did not unfold it. She just put her hand on top of it and looked at Cole. He signed a deed, she said, for land that does not belong to him. I was there when he did it. I saw the man who wrote it. I heard what was said. Her jaw tightened. That land belongs to a family named Pruitt, a mother and 2 boys. He ran them off 2 weeks ago and filed the deed 3 days later. Cole looked at the paper under her hand. That's the deed? He asked. It's a copy, she said, the kind that will hold up. Outside, one of Boone's men had moved. Cole tracked it through the window without turning his head, a shift of peripheral vision so practiced it looked like stillness. The man had gone around the side of the general store and was now somewhere Cole could not see, which was exactly the kind of development that required immediate accounting for. He stood up. Can you ride? He asked Nell. She looked at her bare feet and then back at him with something in her expression that was not quite dry humor but was related to it. Better than I can walk right now, she said. Cole almost smiled. Almost. Stay here, he said. Stay away from the front windows. Dora knows what to do. He picked up his rifle from the wall. Nell watched him move toward the back of the cookhouse. He stopped with his hand on the door and turned once. And for a moment, the 2 of them were just looking at each other. The deputy with his rifle and the barefoot girl with her folded deed. And the morning light was coming through the side window and laying itself across the floor between them like something that had not yet decided what it was going to be. Why are you doing this? Nell asked. Cole thought about that for exactly 1 second. Because you came in and asked for a meal, he said. And that ought to be enough. He pushed through the back door and was gone. Nell sat alone at the table. The coffee had gone warm. She wrapped both hands around the cup and stared at the folded piece of paper in front of her and listened to the silence outside and the distant sound of a man walking through a back alley in the direction of a fight he had not asked for, but was walking toward anyway. Dora came and stood near her again. He any good? Nell asked without looking up. Dora picked up the empty plate. Best man in the territory, she said, and about the saddest. Nell did not ask what that meant. She already understood it. She had met enough people who had been carved down to something efficient and functional by the things that had happened to them. She recognized the shape of it. She recognized it because she was one of them. She picked up the folded deed and pressed it against her chest and sat there in Dora's cookhouse and waited for the sound of what came next. Cole came out of the alley behind the blacksmith shop into a gap between buildings that gave him a clean view of the general store porch. Gil Boone was still there, leaning against the post, one thumb hooked in his belt, watching the front door of Dora's with the patience of a man who had money behind him and knew it. The third man, the one who had gone around the side, was crouched at the corner of the lumber yard building about 40 feet north. He had a good angle on the cookhouse door from there, which meant he had been positioned before they came inside. They had scouted the town. They had a plan. This was not an impulse, it was an operation. That changed things. Cole counted what he had. One rifle, his sidearm, 14 months of knowing every board and barrel and water trough on this street, and one piece of information that Gil Boone did not have. Cole was already behind them. He moved north along the back line of buildings, keeping low, keeping quiet. The dirt was hard-packed and dry, and his boots made almost no sound. He came up behind the lumber yard and circled wide around the north end until he was approaching the crouching man from the wrong direction entirely. The man heard him at the last possible moment, heard the shadow or the breath or the small shift of air, and started to spin around. And Cole was already there. And there was a short, sharp exchange that involved Cole's rifle stock and the man's shoulder. And then the man was sitting in the dirt, holding his arm, and looking up at Cole with an expression that was equal parts pain and calculation. "Shout, and I'll make the other arm match," Cole said. His voice was the same as it had been in the cookhouse. Level. No theater in it. The man did not shout. Cole took the man's weapon and kept moving. He came around the front corner of the lumber yard and walked directly across the street toward the general store porch. He walked in the open. He made no attempt to hide because hiding at this point was no longer the geometry that served him. He had the third man's gun. He had the initiative. And Gil Boone was about to discover that the variable he had not accounted for had gone around behind him while he was watching a door. Gil Boone saw him coming. His easy smile flickered. He straightened up from the post and his hand moved toward his side and then stopped, because Cole had the rifle level, and walking at that pace meant he was not inclined to stop walking, and the math of that was clear. The second man came off the wall. "Don't," Cole said. The second man looked at Gil. Gil looked at the rifle. Something moved behind his eyes. The same calculation the man in the dirt had run, and arriving at the same conclusion. "This is not your business, Hadley," Gil said. "The town's my business," Cole said. Everything in it. The girl took something that belongs to me. She took a piece of paper that belongs to the Pruitt family, Cole said. Difference being that the Pruitt family's land is in this county, which makes the deed that was filed on it my business twice over. Gil Boone's jaw moved. He was doing the arithmetic on how far he had come and how much he had committed, and whether the number still worked with Cole Hadley standing in front of him holding a rifle with no expression on his face at all. "You've got one man in the dirt up the street," Cole said. "You've got a federal land fraud charge sitting in a deed office with a witness who walked 2 days on bare feet to deliver it. And you've got me." He let that sit. "Ride out," Cole said. The street was silent. Then Gil Boone's second man stepped back, where he did it slowly and deliberately, the way men step back when they have decided that the numbers have changed and they want to do it with their dignity still attached. Gil Boone looked at Cole for a long moment. The fishhook scar under his eye caught the morning light. His jaw worked once, like he was chewing something that had gone sour. "This is not done," Gil said. "It is today," Cole said. Gil Boone turned and walked off the porch. The second man fell in behind him. Cole watched them go to the end of the street, to where their horses were tied at the rail near the water trough. They mounted up, They rode north without looking back. Cole let out a breath he had been managing for the last 3 minutes. He lowered the rifle. He stood there in the middle of the street for a moment, in the full morning sun, on feeling the weight of the quiet that followed a thing like that. The particular silence that settled over a place once a threat had been moved out of it. Not peace, exactly. Not yet. More like the pause between one storm and the next. He went back to Dora's to get Nell Hart and figure out what happened next. She was sitting at the table where he had left her, both hands around the coffee cup, the folded deed on the table in front of her. Her eyes came up when he walked in, and she read his face in that quick, efficient way she had, and some of the tightness went out of her shoulders. "Gone?" she asked. "Boone and one man," Cole said. "Third man is sitting in the dirt up the street. He needs a doctor for his arm, and then he needs a jail cell." Dora was already moving, pulling a coat off a hook near the back. "I'll get Doc Purdy," she said, and was out the back door. Cole sat down across from Nell again. He set the rifle against the wall and put his hands on the table and looked at the deed. "That paper needs to go to the land office," he said. "Today, before Boone gets back to wherever he's coming from and has time to think about his next move." "I know," Nell said. She looked at her bare feet under the table. "I need shoes." Cole reached into his coat and set some coins on the table. Nell looked at them and then at him. "That is not charity," he said. "That is the county paying a witness for her time." Nell looked at the coins for a moment. She had a way of going still when she was deciding something. Not the defensive stillness from before, but a thinking kind of quiet. Then she picked up the coins. I am going to want to talk to you," Cole said. "About the Pruitts, about where they went, about exactly what you heard and when." "I know," she said again. "And I'm going to want to get that testimony written down before Boone has a chance to make anything complicated." She nodded. Cole looked at her. Not the way Gil Boone had looked at her. The way Dora had looked at her in the doorway, taking in the bruised jaw and the bare feet and the 2 days of walking and the particular courage it took to walk into a town you did not know and ask for a hot meal with 32 cents and a piece of paper that 3 armed men were chasing you over. He had seen a lot of people come into Cutter's Creek over 14 months. He had seen plenty of trouble walk through Dora's front door. He had not seen anything quite like this. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She looked at him, that careful measuring look. "When you left the Boone Range," he said, "when you took that paper and started walking, did you know where you were going?" Nell was quiet for a moment. "I knew the direction," she said. "South, away from him and toward somewhere that had law in it." She paused. "I did not know if the law would be worth anything once I got here." Cole absorbed that. "And?" he said. The corner of her mouth moved, just barely. Not quite a smile. But the first thing in her face that was not calculation or guardedness or held back fear. Something small and real that had decided, just for a moment, to surface. "Ask me again in a week," she said. Cole got up and went to find Doc Purdy and deal with the man in the dirt. And the morning moved forward the way mornings do, without asking permission from anyone, and without any particular regard for what the people in it had been through to get there. The land office in Cutter's Creek was run by a man named Otis Farr, who was 61 years old, thin as fence wire, and possessed of the kind of meticulous precision that comes from spending 40 years making sure the documentation of land in a territory where land meant everything was done exactly right. He wore spectacles on a chain and kept 3 different ink colors on his desk and had opinions about handwriting that he shared whether you asked for them or not. When Cole Hadley walked into the land office that afternoon with Nell Hart beside her in a pair of worn boots that Dora had found in the back room, close enough to her size that she only limped a little, and set the folded deed on Otis Farr's desk. Otis looked at it over his spectacles with the expression of a man who had been waiting for exactly this kind of document to arrive on his desk. "I've been watching that filing with some concern," Otis said, unfolding the deed with 2 fingers as though it might bite. "The Pruitt parcel. 32 acres on the North Fork. The original deed was filed by a Clement Pruitt in 1871. Wife's name on the title. 2 boys, minors." He looked up at Nell. "You witnessed the fraudulent filing?" "I was present when the document was prepared," Nell said. "I can describe the man who wrote it, the date, who was in the room, and what was said." Otis looked at her the way he looked at a document he was evaluating. Carefully, without sentiment. "Your name?" he said. "Nell Hart." "Previous address?" "The Boone Range, North Fork. I was employed as a housekeeper." Her voice did not change when she said it. She had clearly decided how to carry this particular fact, and had made her peace with the carrying. "I am no longer employed there." Otis made a note. He looked at the copy of the deed. He turned it over. He held it toward the window light and examined the ink with the focus of a jeweler examining a stone. "This is Amos Greer's handwriting," he said. Cole and Nell both looked at him. "You know the man who wrote it?" Cole said. "I know his work," Otis said. "Amos Greer was a land clerk in Hays City for 11 years. Left under circumstances that were not discussed publicly, but were discussed privately." He set the document flat on his desk and looked at Cole over his spectacles. "He has been operating in this region for approximately 8 months. He is not the first fraudulent deed he has prepared." The room was quiet. Cole felt the shape of what Otis was telling him, forming itself into something larger than one girl and one piece of paper and one family run off their land. "How many?" Cole said. Otis opened a desk drawer. He removed a folder that was thick enough to make a sound when he set it on the desk. 7 filings in 3 counties, he said, all within the last 8 months, all involving parcels adjacent to land owned or controlled by Gil Boone or associates of Gil Boone. He folded his hands on the desk. "I've been assembling this folder for 6 weeks. I've been waiting for one piece of direct eyewitness testimony to take it to the circuit judge." Nell looked at the folder. She looked at Cole. Something shifted in her face. Not the small, almost smile from the morning, but something deeper and more complicated. The look of a person who has walked 2 days and bled through their feet and been chased by armed men and sat in a cookhouse wondering if the law was worth anything, and has just found out that what they were carrying was not just one family's land, but something that was going to land considerably harder than they knew. 7 families, Nell said. 7 filings, Otis said. Some filings involved more than one family. Cole put his hand flat on the folder. He looked at Otis. "When is Judge Calloway due through?" he said. "In 12 days. Otis said. "He is currently in Dodge City for a federal case. He will come through Cutter's Creek on his circuit the 2nd week of next month." 12 days, Cole said. 12 days, Otis confirmed. Cole picked up the folder. He picked up Nell's copied deed. He held both. "Boone will know by tonight that this went to the land office," Cole said. "He will know by tomorrow morning what it means." "Yes," Otis said. "Which means he will not wait 12 days before he does something about it." "Almost certainly not," Otis agreed. Cole looked at Nell. She was looking at the window. Her jaw was set. The bruise had gone a deeper yellow in the afternoon light, and she was standing in the borrowed boots with her hands at her sides and the expression of someone who had already done the arithmetic and arrived at the part where it cost more than she had originally budgeted for and was not turning around. "I need a place to keep her safe," Cole said to Otis. "Not my department," Otis said. "No," Cole said. He was already thinking. "But it's mine." He turned to Nell. She looked at him. "You are going to be a material witness in a federal land fraud case," Cole said. "That means the United States government has an interest in your well-being. It also means Gil Boone has an interest in the opposite." "I understand," she said. You still want to do this?" Nell Hart looked at him for a moment in the afternoon light of a land office in a small town at the edge of nowhere, and she thought about 7 families and 32 acres and 2 boys who were minors on a deed that now lived in a fraudulent filing somewhere in this county. She thought about the Pruitt mother. She thought about herself 2 days ago, standing at the edge of the Boone property with a piece of paper in her hand and nothing on her feet in a direction, just a direction, not a plan, that said south. "I already did the hard part," she said, walking in and asking for the meal. Cole almost smiled again, and this time it got slightly further before he caught it. "Then we better figure out the rest," he said. Outside, the afternoon light was tilting west over Cutter's Creek. And down the street, Dora was standing on her porch watching the land office door. The blacksmith was back at his anvil. 2 horses were tied at the rail in front of the saloon. The town was going about its business in the way that towns go about their business. The surface of ordinary life moving forward over whatever was underneath it. 12 days until Judge Calloway, 1 witness with a bruised jaw and borrowed boots, 1 deputy who had been acting for 14 months and had just made himself the centerpiece of a federal case. And somewhere north of the creek, a man with a fishhook scar riding fast toward a decision about how hard he was willing to push. The story was not over. It was, in the way of all things that begin with someone stepping out of nowhere and asking for what they need, only just getting started. Cole tucked the folder under his arm, held the door for Nell Hart, and walked out into the tilting afternoon to do the job that needed doing, which was the only thing he had ever known how to do. And which, today, felt for the first time in 14 months like it might actually matter to someone besides himself. Nell walked beside him, limping slightly in the borrowed boots, carrying nothing but the weight of what she knew and the quiet, absolute determination of a person who had decided that 2 days on bare feet across open country was a down payment, not a total, and that the balance was still owed to 7 families and a circuit judge 12 days out. The street was long, and the sun was going down, and neither of them said anything more. They did not need to.